Hello, everyone. Okay, I'm mentally prepared for this. Today, we have a subject that I didn't necessarily want to cover. However, I've been going over it for the past couple days in my head, and I decided that because gym therapy is a place where we're talking about things that all of us kind of go through, societal norms and expectations, and hot topics when it comes to, I guess, how we as people interact with one another, I decided that maybe it is for the best that I talk about it. By no means, over the course of this video, am I presenting anything that I believe as fact, anything I say is fact. I simply want to go over things that I have read, things that I think I may know, and I guess my opinion. I know a couple of my friends are going to be biting at the bars of their enclosures when they see the title of this video, because I sometimes have in-depth talks with them. And this has kind of come up over the past couple of weeks. But if you haven't guessed by now, I'm going to stop edging everyone. I would like to talk about the man versus bear thing. For everyone who isn't familiar with the topic, basically the premise is if a girl was alone on a trail in the middle of the woods, would she prefer to run into a bear or a man? I think the fact that this is a question posed at all on some level means we have failed as men. Girls have had enough bad experiences that it has become societally popular to. I don't know if this is necessarily making light of it, but it's common enough that we can just kind of offhandedly have topics about it, right? Like, we can interview people in the street and ask them who's more violent, who's more dangerous, bears or men. The question isn't, are there good men? Of course there are good men. The question is, have girls experienced enough bad men that they are inherently just fearful? And I think some of that fear also comes from society. I'm sure that girls who have never experienced any kind of assault in their life, any kind of, you know, bad interaction with men, are also fearful just because they hear from their friends or they read it online. I see negative stuff about men online all the time. I would also like to say, however, that I see negative stuff about women all the time. I have this kind of, maybe it's a terrible point of view, but I don't think that either gender is necessarily bad. I think different genders suffer from different problems from each other. I think all people have the same capacity for. Evil is kind of a strong word, but I think because of the way our brains work, perhaps, and hormones, I think different, groups, men, women, are predispositioned to different types of bad behavior. So I think I'm going to get into the man versus bear thing, and then I'm going to get into I guess, the stats of everything, maybe. And then I guess some things that I read online about how I think we are failing each other, both men and women. So if you're not hotly invested by now, and not ready to cancel me already, I will see you in the gym. We have a cool little leg day, so my brain can be at minimum percentage because there will be no blood in it, all in the legs. And hopefully I don't say anything too crazy. And if I do, well, it's been a good run. Alright, so today we're going to be doing the hack squat. And as we have been doing, we're just going to focus on depth, focus on form, and I think slow, controlled reps are the best way, at least for me, to grow these quads, because while they're looking pretty okay in the mirror, I want to double it and give it to the next person being me. We're definitely getting deeper than we got last week. I kind of watched the footage back and I was like, you know what? If I be brave, I can go a little bit further down. So that's kind of what we're doing today. So on to the topic of today. I think there's two sides to this. I think on the one hand, it is a very valid fear that I really can't relate to, of, being alone in a dark alley or walking down the street. Actually, I lied. I think if we take a moment to think for a second, men, women, whoever, think about a time that you were in maybe a dangerous part of the neighborhood and it was late and you had to walk to your car. You're more alert, right? You're looking over your shoulder. You're kind of checking people out if you see them, not wanting to walk too close to anyone. I think we all have experienced the fear, I suppose, that has driven a majority of girlies to say that they would prefer the bear. I don't think men really understand the question, or maybe they're just kind of... So let me address what guys say. And I do think what guys are saying is valid, right? When they're talking about the question of the man versus bear, they're like, oh, well, how many men have you seen in your life? Thousands, tens of thousands even. How many bears? Most people, it's zero. Most people, I think, haven't been within 50 feet of a bear outside of like a zoo. Bears are terrifying creatures, depending on the species of bear. There are tales of grizzlies when the colonials kind of came over, and they described them like demons, right? Taking out whole squadrons of men with muskets. Bears are not to be underestimated for their strength and speed and ferocity by any means. But I think the question is less so, are girls more afraid of bears or men? It's more so kind of illustrating the daily kind of worry that girls have because they encounter men. If I'm completely wrong on this, let me know. But I think in a vacuum, like if we were being totally real, I think the reality is, if you had a bear in one room, the man in the other room, and you ask a girl which one they'd go in, I think, like realistically, they'd be going into the room with the man. But in the context of the question, which I think is really just asking, what are you worried about in your day-to-day life? It's not about animals eating you. It's about the dangers of humanity. And I think that's where we as men have failed. Let me get a second. I don't think it's a problem of, I've seen this thrown around, it's like, men, you have to hold other men accountable. Because I think the good guys do, which I'd like to think is a majority, right? I think the statistics, and don't cite me, I might be off a little bit, but 1 in 33 men are likely to either attempt or complete an essay on another person in their lifetime, which is horrible. I think the good men, at least the ones I've surrounded myself with, if they saw something happening, I'm gonna give a totally anecdotal story here. When I was younger, I was friends with this girl, and at a party, she drunkenly flashed some people. One individual decided it would be a good idea to take a picture and then share. This guy, from me and my friends, was ostracized from our friend groups. Literally dragged, piece of shit, not a good person, and we didn't let it slide. It was terrible what happened. I hope that he has learned to be a better person and learned from that. I don't want to say it's a mistake, because when you're a fully functioning adult, you should know that this is not something that you should be doing. So I hope he learned from his action and is a better person today. But I have surrounded myself with good people, and I like to think that other good men, which I hope is the majority, also do that. I think any guy who is sitting there letting bad behavior like that fly and staying friends with them is inherently not a good guy himself. And if that's your boyfriend, if that's your husband, if that's people you associate with, I would strongly recommend not associating with them anymore. I think the bad eggs stir on the bad eggs. I don't think, and again, maybe this is just positive mindset Chris seeping through, but I really don't think genuinely good people let bad people skirt by on things without saying anything. Because I just think inherently, if you're doing that, you're not a good person. So it's impossible for us to be talking about it. Let's get another second. Alright. So we're going to pick up this conversation on maybe the sussy adductor. We'll see. Let's see what's open. Alright. So next, doing the adduction. Good for the inner legs. Good for making you a cripple the next day if you do too much weight and too many reps. So, let's get our first set. Alright, so I think what it comes down to, where this conversation is concerned, is the things that we see these bad guys do. Is it nature or is it nurture? Are men raised in a way that makes them do bad things, and at which point it is a failure on the previous generation and the one before that, etc., etc.? Or is it in man's nature to do bad things? I think the environment could play a factor. I, with my purely anecdotal experience, went through terrible things. I witnessed my dad do horrid things to me, to my mother, to my sister, and I could have turned around and used that template that I saw and done those things to the people in my life. But I chose to do the opposite. I never wanted to be like that, and I made it almost a personal mission to be as far opposite of those things that I witnessed as I could. I've also seen the opposite. Guys who experienced XYZ thing, who had a tough, rough upbringing, and they then used all of that trauma to justify doing terrible things to people. I hate to say that I think humanity is maybe largely self-interested and not so altruistic. At the end of the day, I suppose we are still animals and meat Gundams housing hormones, and people will justify the things that they want to do with whatever justification they need. And I think that's terrible. I think we are all intelligent. We understand what's right and wrong when it comes to interacting with the people around us. And people who take advantage of others, especially those who cannot defend themselves, are the worst kind of scum on this planet. Let's get a setup. So I think we've established it's not so much about the bear. It's not so much about the actual question and the logistics of it. Because objectively, I think if there was a polar bear, as I said earlier, in one room and a guy in another, I think nobody's probably walking into the polar bear room. However, when we're talking about the meta-narrative, girls are scared of a lot of men. I do my best to... I am so hyper-aware, I guess, of people's comfort, and so I've had friends who would say, Chris, why don't you go talk to a girl at the gym? I am not doing that. That's crazy. People at the gym are here to work out, and they're here to do their own thing and self-improve, and I am not about to bother anyone. Especially in a place that has been so socially criticized. So, that's not to say I haven't met people at the gym. I have. But in every single situation, they have talked to me. I will not. That's not because I'm scared. I'm not scared of talking to people. But I understand that I, as a guy, do not have a fear that other people will hurt me. Generally. And I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. So I guess I'm just trying to do my part in society. And am I taking it too far? Am I maybe too careful? Could be. Very much I could be. But I'd rather be too careful than not careful. So that's kind of my opinion. I also don't think that men are the only people capable of doing bad things. I don't think men have a monopoly on treating people poorly. In fact, I think some studies even suggest as much. I wish I could actually cite the statistics offhand, but it's a topic I researched. There are some studies that suggest that men are more predisposed to physical stuff, while ladies are more predisposed to mental stuff, right? And again, anecdotal experience. My mother did terrible things to me from a psychological point of view. She was not the physically abusive one when I was growing up. It was, of course, my father, who was a drinker. No, that's a joke. I can't help myself sometimes. I've also experienced that in relationships where I totally... And I'm not saying that guys are incapable of psychological warfare. They totally are. But I think since we are intelligent creatures, we lean into our strengths, right? And I have had emotions weaponized against me. I have been gaslit. I have experienced all of these things from people of the opposite gender, and I've never really been physically. Well, okay, I had one girlfriend who did put her hands on me, and it was a very jarring experience. I have seen thrown around in the same sphere as the man versus bear from men say, if you had to be emotionally vulnerable with a woman or a tree, which would you choose? Of course, men choose the tree, because there is this narrative that being emotionally weak with a girl is tantamount to societal suicide. I have personally experienced this. I don't know that I ever will again be able to be emotionally vulnerable with a girl, because it was used against me, and it was invalidated, and it was completely trampled over and ignored every single time I attempted it. According to the internet, this is a common occurrence. I think it is a fair and valid inverse. However, what I don't like is when people abscond problems and turn it into their own problem. I don't like that we're having this kind of conversation about the dangers that girls face in our society, and then immediately go and say, yeah, but what about me? What about my problems? I think that's disingenuous, and I think it's tone deaf, and I think it's part of the reason that we can't make any progress sometimes. Because if we're not willing to address things, we just want to say, oh, but I have problems instead. How are you possibly ever going to make any progress? Wait up for 2 more sets. I also don't know what a solution is. If we are to assume that people generally are going to do bad things, and I think that if you had a gun to my head and you asked me if the people who do bad things are just bad people, I would say yes. I don't think it had anything to do with the way they were raised. I don't think it had anything to do with the things they had experienced in life. I think it really came down to the fact that they had the power to do something terrible and they chose to do it. It wasn't a matter of education. It wasn't a matter of having been taught morals. I think largely, and there are outliers, right? There are some people who are genuinely not as cognizant of their actions and emotions as I am, right? There's a reason we have medical designations for being psychopathic and sociopathic and all that kind of stuff, and that makes people act out of what we consider the norm. But I think everyone who falls outside of that is literally just someone who is a bad person. They know that what they're doing is bad, but they have justified in their mind that this thing that I am about to do is okay. I deserve this thing because of all of these reasons. And then they do it. Hypothetically, I know a guy who goes on, or who I know, somehow I'm psychic and I can see the future and I know he's going to do something terrible to somebody. I don't think there's any conversation that I could have with this person that would stop them from doing the bad thing. Because I think they're they're just a bad person. And they're going to use whatever justification they can to do bad things. I'm going to use my father as an example again. I don't think it is a social mystery that abusing your family is bad. I think that is a commonly known thing. He wasn't oblivious to his actions. He chose, regardless of mind-altering substances, regardless of alcohol, regardless of all these things, even he knew, and he chose to do it, which is what is so awful about people who do these things. They know. And it's not a matter of holding other men accountable, I don't think. It's a matter of we need to be, I think, more aware that bad people just exist. Period. Let me do a set and I'm going to get into some statistics. Alright. And by get another set in, I mean do another set, go to a different machine, and then get to some statistics. So, 1 second. Alright, so leg curls next, and then we'll get into those stats. Leg extension, that's perfect. I think it's important to acknowledge that the people perpetuating these crimes are not typically random thief in the night sexual assassins that abduct people. The stats heavily suggest that in most cases, when it comes to these assaults, that it is family members and friends of the family. I don't like to say that it's your fault as a parent or it's your fault as a guy or girl that bad things happen to you, because it's not. At the end of the day, this other person chose to do the things that they chose. This perfectly mentally accountable, knows right from wrong person chose to be a monster. However, I do think it is our responsibility to avoid threats if we can, to try and identify them and be as safe as possible for ourselves. Again, not your fault that bad things happen to you, but I think because of the world that we live in and acknowledging that, you know, as much positivity as I might try to bring out over the course of this YouTube series, I don't think, like I said earlier, bad people are going to do bad things regardless of anything I or anyone else says to them. Oh gosh, this video is getting really crazy. But it's like if you had a child and you knew that someone who did bad things to children lived in your neighborhood. You know, they were convicted and they got out of jail. I think you more than likely would be very careful about your child's whereabouts when they were not in your home, right? I think when we perceive danger, we actively avoid it, and I think that goes back to, or we try to do things to mitigate it, and that goes back to the bear and man thing, right? A lot of girls perceive men as dangerous, so they actively avoid them. And a lot of men understand this, right? A lot of men will go across the street when they see a young lady in the night, right? We try not to put them in social situations they don't want to be in. I don't know, when I used to go to the bar with my girlfriends, I would watch their drinks, right? Because I understand that other people will do bad things. And I think it is our job to look out for people and try to make sure the bad things don't happen. Now, with that being said, and I have disavowed the behavior of flipping the subject when someone's bringing you a grievance. And maybe this is shame on me, and it's my experiences that have kind of led me to believe what I believe. but I don't think men have a monopoly on being bad people. I think girls are just as capable of it, but it looks different, right? It's more nuanced, it's more psychological in nature, more manipulative. And that is kind of what I've experienced in life. Not to say that there aren't girl like serial killers and girl essayers and all that kind of stuff, because they definitely exist. But you know the saying of like, behind every great man is a great woman? Not saying the inverse is true, but Bonnie and Clyde. I don't know. I don't have any proof on that, but I guess I've just experienced bad things from both sides pretty equally in my life. The bad looks differently, right? Men have been physically violent. I've seen it. Not just to me, right? I don't go around and get like beat up by every guy. I mean, look at it. I can take care of myself. But I did experience that from my father. You see other guys do it in the wild on videos and reels and all that kind of stuff. I saw a guy get out of a car, literally driving by on an SUV, and he jumped out of the car. This kid was like playing music on the side of the road, and he just got out, walked over, acted like he was like dancing and like having a good time, and he just decked him in the face and knocked this kid out. Luckily, through the power of the internet, they found the dude and he got like 10 years in jail or something. Deserved. Well, that's what I've seen on the internet. And then from girls, there was a situation where I was taken advantage of by a woman who I did not want to have relations with, but between perhaps being inebriated and also not feeling like it was socially acceptable to say no. I've been there, and I get it, and I understand what feeling helpless is like. And I know what not feeling like you could say anything about it was either, because I never said anything about it. A couple of people, after years, I felt brave enough to say something about it, but I still don't even believe that it's really taken that seriously, because it's like, you're a guy. I think that's social progress that we all could and should work on. Because perhaps the stats aren't as skewed as they suggest. Maybe it's more so a factor of guys don't report things. It's not masculine to be a victim. That's what society says. Is that toxic masculinity? Is that the patriarchy? I don't know. What do you think in the comments? Let's get another section. I'm going to do one more. I don't want to put everybody into a box, but when I see kind of a conversation like man or bear, I think, why are you so upset about it? Do you, on some level, feel guilty? Have you not listened to someone's boundaries before? Have you perhaps not been an up-and-coming young man like you should have been, and you feel personally attacked when someone says this? Do you enjoy, I suppose, devaluing people's experiences? Like what is the end game? Shouldn't we take a conversation like this and think, you know what? Clearly there's a problem in society. How can we address it? Is some of this kind of sensationalized fear? Is it kind of like an echo chamber, kind of repeating things and regurgitating things? And yes, perhaps. Is everyone as afraid of each other as people suggest on the internet? Maybe not. Is it a genuine problem? Yes. And I think when we don't look at it and think, gee, why does this person feel this way? How can I fix it? And I think there is fixing it to be done on both sides. Like I kind of said earlier, we should all live our lives protecting ourselves. We should all be making decisions that have our own best interests at heart. And I wouldn't, and maybe it's my kind of disjointed relationship with other people that have me feel this way, but I don't put anything past anyone in my life. If someone came up to me and said XYZ person killed somebody, I'd be like, damn, that's crazy. I wouldn't sit there and be like, oh no, that's impossible, so-and-so would never do it. I would just take it at face value. I believe everyone is capable of everything. But it is our intelligence and hopefully our good-mindedness that largely helps us make good decisions. Is that controversial? It's gonna be better. Alright, so from here, I'm going to do tabs, but I've decided I'm not going to film tabs anymore. It'll give me a couple seconds to kind of get my thoughts together, think of anything else I want to talk about, and I think the last exercise I will greet you at is the lying leg curl. So see y'all in a minute. Alright, and lastly, of course, like I said, lying leg curl. Don't skip calves though. I know I didn't show it. Doesn't mean that you don't have to do them. So I think kind of where I'm getting to with this whole thing is I wish societally we could hear problems and we could try to address them without everyone feeling personally attacked. Like, because you say men can be dangerous, that of course doesn't mean all men. And almost in every circumstance, it is excluding the good men. But for whatever reason, we have, at least online, people unable to separate good from bad. They think, I don't know, when you say men, it's including them, but it's not. This is almost like this very tribal mindset, like oonga boonga. Men under attack must defend all men. Like, it's if it's not you, it's not about you. So don't take it as being about you. I think, and it's the same thing with girls, right? I think it's more the nature of our culture, of our society, of intelligent life, that we're just like, oh, this person who is like me is under attack, regardless of if they share my qualities. So I must defend because I, on some level, feel attacked also. And I think we just need to get away from that. Identify that there are bad people, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity, hobbies, interests, likes, and say those people are bad, but I am not them, right? This person is complaining about things they've experienced, but that's not me. I've never met that person. I've never acted like that. And I think it's everyone's duty to be aware and understand that there will, I think, always be bad people. And we just have to do our best to mitigate it. And when you see it and you're able to do something about it, don't turn a blind eye. Don't have the bystander syndrome where you think it's someone else's job. Because when you think it's someone else's job, no one's going to do anything, and that leads to more people getting hurt. Let's get a second. Legs are hard. That's precisely why they're worth doing. Well, that's going to wrap up my most controversial video to date. Am I an expert in the field? No. Am I necessarily qualified to be talking about the subject? Also, maybe not. But I think the point of gym therapy is to talk about societal issues that are happening. And I like to think I'm a good person. I like to think that I put my best foot forward for everybody that my life touches. Men, women, children. So I felt the need to talk about it because I saw a lot of things I didn't agree with. I saw some things I did agree with. And like I said, we're going to the gym. We're trying to improve our mental. And I think we're just trying to genuinely be better people. And I think part of being better people is acknowledging when there are problems in society. And I think a problem in society is men's proclivity to violence. It's also people's inclination to not accept fault when there's fault. It's to turn a blind eye when it's a friend doing something or a relative, right? Not wanting to ruin their lives or ruin your own life, thinking too much about the consequences of doing the right thing instead of just doing the right thing. Maybe some people are bad. Maybe some people learn to be bad. I'm not sure. I think on some level we all have the capacity to be good. We all have the ability to make good decisions, but some of us choose not to. And I think for the sake of everyone, we need to look out for each other. We need to identify when there are bad people, and we need to do something about it when we're able. And if you do not, you are yourself a bad person. There are people in this world who cannot do anything for themselves. I was one of them for 18 years. Nobody helped me. I can promise everyone who watches this video, and I've promised myself, that if I ever see someone in a similar situation, I'm not going to sit on my hands and let it just happen. I wish someone would have done that for me. And the same thing can be extended to violence toward women. The whole reason we're having this conversation to begin with, man versus bear. If your homie is being a trash can, you should do something about it. Why wouldn't you? It kind of goes back to some of the other topics, right? Someone does something bad to you and then you immediately lash out and do something bad back. What kind of person does that make you? And it's the same thing here. If you see someone doing something absolutely horrific to another human being and you sit there and you let it happen and you continue to associate with this person, that inherently makes you just as vile. If anyone's watching this who has had morally questionable decisions in their life, is leaning towards doing something heinous, has had those thoughts, and if my words can reach you, I implore you to rethink it. I implore you to think about this other human, that they have thoughts and feelings and dreams, and they are just like you, and it is wrong to violate their rights intrinsically. Outside of like the government rights, right? How would you feel if that was you? Just completely helpless and at the mercy of someone else. It's not right. I have empathy for every woman who feels like they genuinely would choose the bear. And as I hope all the men watching this take away to be better, to act better, and hold those around them accountable if they need to be held accountable, I will vow for myself that every day I will choose to try to be a better option than the bear. I choose to try to create a society where if this question were asked in 50 years, there would be a different answer. Will there ever be? Maybe not. Are people the way they are? Possibly. But I can control my own actions, and I hope that all of you can as well. So, if I'm not canceled, because my opinions are too radical. I will see all you pookies on the next one.